Yeah, so I'm Lorna Prescott. I work for an organisation called Dudley CBS, and we support community organisations, voluntary sector organisations, including charities and social enterprises. And I was doing some work with the public sector in Dudley, and discovered that two people who I already knew from a charity background were setting up a social enterprise, and they'd taken on a large retail unit on Dudley High Street that had been empty for 8 years. So this kind of dark spot on the high street, as we've got quite a few of, and started by hand to turn it into a beautiful creative space that invites people in with a really warm welcome, serves amazing coffee, and the served there is really interesting for Dudley. There's lots of vegan and vegetarian options which you wouldn't get anywhere else in the town centre. So that attracts people in from a bit further afield who are looking for something a bit different. And because it's such a large unit, there are also other spaces that the social enterprise can play with to do things and invite people to use. So further back in the space, we have what we call a public living room, and we have all sorts of projects happening in there. We have a fully equipped workshop that's used for all different kinds of making, with lots of woodworking tools in it, and an area of waste ground at the back which belongs to the property has been transformed into a garden over about a year or so by 50 local people, and it's stunning. It's growing raspberries, potatoes, tomatoes and all sorts.
Yeah. And they're thriving.
Yeah.
Even the Christmas tree.
Even the Christmas tree, yeah.
So Lorna, we spoke the other day about the importance of persuasion and the importance of place. Let's start with persuasion first of all. So I found it to be a very inspirational space, but what do you do to persuade others that it's something worth investing in? It's, you know, I know that you do get investors, funding, even people buying coffees for others, you know, paying it forward. How do you get that buy-in? How do you manage to persuade society that it's something which is really valuable?
In terms of people who live in and around the area, maybe they have families, maybe they do some volunteering, maybe they work for local organisations or businesses. I think it genuinely is by walking in the door and feeling the welcome makes them want to be part of it. They feel safe there, and they feel like it's a place where they don't necessarily need to ask permission to do things. They can kind of say, I'd like to do this, and have this feeling that the response will be brilliant. How can we help you to make that happen? So I think it's a sort of a reciprocal buy-in. So the co-founders are kind of buying into people's ideas and aspirations, as well as people buying into the enterprise themselves.
And sometimes what I notice with voluntary organisations or charitable organisations or social enterprises, it's very easy to get that buy-in in terms of goodwill, in terms of, you know, positive enthusiasm, but in terms of hard cash, does it translate as much as it needs to in terms of getting the profitability of it going?
Yeah, so I mean, part of the reason that I'm involved is because I saw potential in the spaces, including the coffee shop and beyond the coffee shop. And I think the very original plan that the founders had was that they'd lease those spaces out as office space for people to rent. And we thought that by working together, we might be able to draw in investment from different kinds of funders or local partners to use those spaces in a way which help people to thrive by, you know, kind of taking part in practical, hands-on and creative projects. So whilst, you know, kind of running a coffee shop and selling food can help to sustain a space that's about the size of the coffee shop, what we're in conversations with different kinds of funders around is how they can be part of what we call a social lab. So we've come together, Dudley CBS, my organisation, with Gather, the social enterprise, and a trust called Unlimited, who support social entrepreneurs. And we've been looking together at how we can help local people to start projects by just creating the simple platforms for that to happen. So things like having a space to use, things like insurance being there in the background so that people don't need to set up complicated governance arrangements just to get together to do some knitting or singing or something. So the interest for funders, I hope, is in this ecosystem, this web of interesting and varied but quite small projects that people are co-designing themselves and making come alive through their existing skills and knowledge and through sharing skills and knowledge with each other. And then in relation to that, we're interested in deeper ideas that come from things like systems practice and community development and participatory research around how having that web of projects and that growing kind of like feeling of heat and creativity can impact positively on some of the challenges that town centres and cities across the land are facing. But, you know, obviously there are challenges around how landlords are making spaces available or not for different things, challenges around policies that affect people's home lives in terms of kind of their financial situations and what they can afford to do. So hopefully we can start to see as this grows and develops different impacts on people's lives in different ways.
Okay, so what you're saying is that you're trying to, well, you are taking away some of those pressures that people could face if they didn't have that space that you've created, pressures such as having to set up the insurances, the financial kind of obligations. So basically you're making it easier for people to be creative by taking away at least some of those challenges that might undermine their creativity.
Yeah, and in addition to that, showing them inspiring ideas from around the world that other people have done. So people, not organisations. So showing them projects that people have bootstrapped and designed and tried out, rather than getting bogged down in planning on paper and not really probably getting anywhere. So we're trying to show people things that they can very swiftly move from ideas to action. And by swiftly, I mean a matter of days. We could sit down with some people on a Tuesday and design a project and have it starting on the Friday or the Saturday and inviting people to it, just in terms of that creative and design process of prototyping and testing ideas in the real world.
Yeah, I just really loved that. You know, I loved the simplicity of it all. So rather than spending months, writing business plans and, that will gather dust after they've been compiled, what you're doing is making the process very simple and allowing people to generate ideas and to create something from nothing. That
Absolutely.
Inspirational. Yes. So, what kind of impact have you seen already that shows you that it's something worth investing in, that it's something that is going to be sustainable? So let's say 10 years' time, will Gather still be a social enterprise which is thriving in 10 years' time? And what will make it so?
So the impact we've seen has been mainly demonstrated by people who've been taking part. So we invite everyone who's part of projects, if they wish to become what we call a detectorist, which means they're participant researchers, basically. And we've also invited people who are interested in what we're doing and learning about it, but who maybe, because their reasons for being in Dudley might be that they work for the NHS or they work for a large charity or something like that. They probably don't have time to come and get involved in projects, but sometimes they visit and have a look. So again, we invite them to make observations and reflections on what they're seeing happening. What's come out of doing that, and we've brought this together and checked this back with the people who've been involved, kind of synthesising the observations and reflections and various interviews that have been carried out by a researcher. We've found that Gather and the projects that people have taken part in have had significant impacts on people's well-being. including their mental health. So some people have kind of contrasted it with the support they've had through the NHS and say it's as helpful, if not more helpful, than some of the things that they've been signposted to help them out of quite challenging situations. We've seen impact on people's perspectives of the town centre. So Dudley is talked about by people who have grown up there and care about it as degenerating, and they feel as though what's happening in Gather and the way that it's happening is creating a spark, and they can feel this heat, they can feel this creative heat, and it's drawn more and more people in who want to be part of growing that and spreading it. We've seen impact in terms of people feeling valued, more than valued, around the skills and talents that they have which aren't valued in other ways. So that kind of affirmation of your worth and the things that you can do and you have knowledge around, being of worth and value beyond what you can do with it yourself, but to wider groups of people and the wider community and society. So in answer to your question about 10 years, I think what our aspirations are is that the spark and the heat that is kind of gently growing starts to spread into other spaces. It doesn't mean that Gather necessarily has plans as a social enterprise to expand in that way, but that what we do together with Unlimited, with Gather founders, is incubate social enterprises who can use the space as well, who those social entrepreneurs might go on to take over other spaces nearby, and we can kind of, as well as connecting a web of projects that people have started, we could connect a web of spaces which end up in creating a town that feels like a really vibrant and creative space where people can thrive and always find someone that knows how to do the thing that they might want to do that they can join in with.
Yes, what I noticed when I visited the other day is that what you're doing is creating an antidote to things like loneliness, isolation. So, in creating this cohesion between people who might otherwise never have met, you're also helping to rebrand Dudley as a town. So it has a reputation for degeneration, and what you're doing is creating something positive. I mean, even something like a vegan, a place where people can get vegan food in the middle of the high street, that's quite unusual for Dudley. So you're transforming the perception of the town, aren't you?
Yeah, so making it more welcome for everyone to be together and do things. Yeah,
excellent. So Lorna, any final words about your project in the last minute now?
Nothing except to say it's an absolute joy working on it, despite the challenges that we sometimes face.
That's so important, isn't it? Because for creativity to flourish, there has to be joy in what we're doing. Otherwise, I wouldn't really label it as being creative if it was something which lacked joy, lacked passion, lacked enthusiasm. Very rare examples. I can't think of any at the moment where where people are struggling. I don't know, that would not be it might be something productive but perhaps not creative. So